and gentlemen, this is my NASCAR Cup Series predictions for the 2025 season. This is going to primarily focus on the 36 chartered cars and where I think they will end up once the course of the season has been completed. So first off, we're looking at the tiers. We're going to have S tier be playoff contender. Um, Outside looking in, i.e., our like third. So that would be our um driver number 13 to driver number 20. The ones that are kind of on that edge, but not really the contenders yet. I'd make it 12 to 20. Um the mid pack. So our drivers who aren't necessarily fighting for a title, but maybe are trying to really bring themselves up in the world of NASCAR. It'll be pretty easy to tell. Our lower tier and our field filler. So here's the thing I will make a comment about this is that this does not necessarily mean that it is going to be exactly like this field filler. These drivers that are down here could pop up and win. Last year I would have put Harrison Burton in the field filler category because that's what the 21's ceiling is on most tracks, but they still made the playoffs. So this is where I think the car will be ranked over the course of the season. This doesn't necessarily mean I think that these teams can't go out and win. But with that being said, we are going to start with the 21 since I've already mentioned where I'm going to put him. He is the field filler car. I think the 21 just doesn't have the same resources and speed that the rest of the teams do, and because of that, they suffer a little bit and will end up more often than not towards the back. I do hope that with Josh Berry they can put up a couple more charges towards the front, but I think that it's just a little bit too much, a little bit too late for them to really reach that push forward until we get either a new package entirely or a new car. With that being said, let's go ahead and start with the other cars. We're going to go in numeric order outside of that, and we're going to start with the number one of Ross Chastain. And it's hard for me to put him in playoff contender, limiting myself to those top really let's make it the top 10 spots. So the outside looking in would be the next 10, but it's hard for me to take him out either. He's almost always going to win a race, and he was close to racing his way in on points last season, even without a win. I think that with a third Trackhouse car, there could be some questions about if he can stay up here. But if you look at the numbers between the four Hendrick cars, the four Joe Gibbs cars, and the two primary Penske cars, one of those I think is going to end up on closer to the outside than Chastain will. And I think that a lot of the really uber competitive cars have kind of fallen away to where this mid pack has opened up a little bit, kind of your B tier. But with that being said, we are going to talk about the one Penske car that I think is going to be in a bit of trouble this year. That's going to be Austin Cindric. Now, this is not to say that I think Cindric ends up in any way, shape, or form in a bad spot, but really, I'm thinking he's going to end up more in the 15 to 20 range. He's shown good poise and promise, but it's hard for me to see him really breaking out this far into his Cup Series career. He's probably going to need to race in off of a win, which he should be able to get, but we'll see what happens. After that, we're going to go with Austin Dillon. I know he won last year, but it's hard for me to put him any further up than this lower tier driver here. RCR has really struggled as of late, and I think that that's going to start showing a little bit more. The only reason why he's really kept out of this is because his teammate probably will be a little bit higher down the line, and I think that RCR is still probably that third Chevrolet team behind Hendrick and Trackhouse. Now we're going to go to one of our brand new locations, the number 4 car of Noah Gragson. And Noah is racing with Furniture Row in their new entry this year, The 4 was an interesting choice, I thought, for this car to be numbered. But you know what? Sometimes that's just how things go. With that being said, though, just looking at how the field stacks up and what I expect out of all of these cars, it's hard for me to see him being super high up. I think I'm going to end up with him going on the outside looking in. Probably. Uh, no, I think he's going to end up mid pack. He's shown good promise behind the wheel, and he's really improved from his days at Legacy Motorsports or Motor Club, my bad. But I still worry that there these three new cars that are getting added are going to kind of be dragged down a little bit by the fact that they are, excuse me, three brand new cars that these teams are having to deal with on teams that maybe don't have the necessary facilities to deal with a third entry just yet. After that, we have our obvious number one playoff contender in Kyle Larson. He's a perennial playoff contender. He's going to contend for the most wins this season, let alone contend for the title. But we're going to go playoff contender for Kyle Larson. That's spot number two. Brad Keselowski is going to be outside looking in. He hasn't shown the speed to pick up a win. I know that RFK Racing looked a lot better at the end of last year, and I am a little bit between him and Chastain in terms of who gets that kind of 10th playoff contender spot. There's one other driver that I'm between as well, because I don't think that everybody can be up there, but I think Keselowski will definitely be above Austin Cindric. He's probably going to be your kind of 13, 14, 15 first one out if there's too many drivers with a win, but probably safe in terms of being the one who points their way in. Now we're going to talk about not Corey LaJoy. It's not Corey LaJoy anymore. It's Justin Haley now. And I think he's going to pull this seven up to where they're kind of fighting that mid pack range. You know, your 20 through your 25 spots, your 20 through 27 spots. But I think that just because of the amount of good cars there are, he still is going to fall in this lower tier category of drivers where he is not necessarily able to kind of break through that top echelon of the drivers to that mid pack just yet. Give him another year, and I think that Spire is making a lot of good strides forward. But I'm also wondering if that seven is going to stay the kind of primary team car. After that, we have Kyle Busch, and this is due to no fault of his own. If this was Kyle Busch still in the 18, he probably would be guaranteed a playoff contender spot. But Kyle Busch in the 8 is only guaranteed outside looking in because of the fact that it is Kyle Busch, and I think he still has the ability to race his way to a 20th place finish in the points without a win. So he's going to be probably the bottom of outside looking in, top of mid pack. Now we have another one of our perennial contenders in Chase Elliott. I don't think he is our primary playoff contender. I do think that's going to be Kyle Larson, but Chase is probably your kind of like 5-6 driver going into the playoffs. Someone that's going to get 3-4 wins on the season and be up there in terms of points towards the regular season title. But we have seen he's missed a little bit of time with injury the past couple of years. We'll see what happens if he can get a full season under his belt again. Now, one of our more interesting entries, the number 10 colleague racing or colleague entry of Ty Dillinger. Ty Dillon, not Ty Dillinger. I'm mixing up my drivers all together today. Um, I am struggling whether to put him lower tier or field filler. I want to be able to put him in lower tier, but I think colleague has not shown enough poise at the top level right now for me to move them above anything but field filler. And really, it might be time for them to start looking at maybe selling their charter to other teams just to see if they can kind of recoup that success at the Xfinity level that has kind of been lost as well. After that, another one of our perennial playoff contenders, Denny Hamlin. He's going to be my number 12 driver, or my number 2 driver in terms of going into the playoffs. 4 wins, probably a win at Pocono. Kind of just he's due for a regression due to age because there is no other entity in sports that's undefeated as much as Father Time is. but I gotta give him props where he's earned it. He's been competitive his entire time at uh, JGR, and I don't see that stopping this year. Now, one of the more tricky situations, Ryan Blaney. He did not seem to be able to really kind of break through last year, and Penske seemed to take a couple steps back, even though Logano won the title. But here's the thing about Penske, whichever of their drivers makes it to the title usually ends up winning. So I think he's going to sneak into the top 10 playoff contenders at that number 9 spot, and will then try and make a run deep to win, to make it to Phoenix to win. After that, we have the 15, who is not Corey LaJoy this year. Or not Corey LaJoy, because he's not running that 15. I don't remember who is running the 15 off the top of my head. Is the 15 being run off the top of my head? Um, so actually, I think that this was made before we got the full release of cars, because there is no 15 this year. They are not a entry. He sold his, or they loaned out their charter, I think, to, was it? I think they loaned out their charter to RFK Racing. But with that being said, we will move to the 16, which is going to be AJ Allmendinger, and I think he's going to be probably solidly mid pack, maybe lower tier. I think he's going to end up lower tier, but he could easily break through to this mid pack top 25 just based off of the number of road courses that there are in the Cup Series schedule as of now. He is a road course ringer after all, though he has improved everywhere else. But I think that right now, Colleague's probably a top end of low tier, especially with Allmendinger. Though probably move Dylan up ahead of Justin Haley and AJ, just because I think that RCR has a little bit better equipment than both of these two teams do. After that, we have Chris Buescher, and he's going to be the top of my or he's going to be actually just under his teammate, Brad Keselowski, on outside looking in. This probably, again, my 11, 12, 13 drivers where it's close to whether or not they make it, but we'll see where they end up. After that, we have one of our new additions to the top teams. We have Chase Briscoe driving for Joe Gibbs Racing, and I think that I'm going to actually put him on the outside looking in. It's a hard one to really rank because he's only been with SHR, and SHR has not been that great over the time that he was there. But he was able to get wins. He could easily break out. Again, between him, Brad Keselowski, and Ross, it's really hard to figure out who's going to be that 10th playoff contender, just in terms of those drivers, because I feel like they're all relatively even with one another. When it comes down to it, all of them have tracks that they're really good at. All of them have tracks that they struggle at. Now, for our actual number 2 driver, because I almost forgot that he was here for whatever reason, Seabell, absolutely going to be number 2. He is starting to take over that primary driver at JGR role. I think that even at this point, he's kind of JGR's ace, even above Denny Hamlin, though Hamlin is the veteran there, just because Seabell has shown the talent to kind of take that ace role at JGR, and he is kind of the equivalent of Kyle Larson there, whereas Hamlin is more the equivalent of Chase Elliott at JGR. After that, we move to our defending champ, who I do think is going to actually not be in our top 10 this time, and I think he's actually going to be relatively low in terms of the outside looking in. So we have to remember that Logano probably would not have made the playoffs last year had it not been for a little bit of luck at Nashville that kind of injected some juice into the veins of that season. So I think that Logano's starting to struggle a little bit as we get into the later stages of his career, though I would love to see him kind of be revitalized after this title towards a new older, more mature Logano that is a playoff contender along the lines of a Denny Hamlin. But for now, I just don't see him reaching that upper echelon of playoff contender. Now we have Bubba Wallace, and I think he is solidly your 15 driver. Like, he is the one who's kind of that could make it on points every year, but is not guaranteed in on points. Sort of the same as Ross was last year, where they're all kind of racing each other right at that mid pack, and it depends on the number of winners. So he is going to be the 15 driver, with Logano probably being 16, Bush being 20, and Cindric being your 18 driver. Now we're going to move to another one of our perennial kind of top five. And this right here is the top five right here. Larson, Bell, Hamlin, Byron, and Elliott. Byron, Elliott, Hamlin, all of these five can swap at any point in time. Byron's really the one that's probably looking to take the most steps forward here, but we will see if he is able to do that this year. It looked like he was at the beginning of last year, but then he ended up kind of just dropping off there at the end of the season, which was disappointing, but we'll see if he can kind of rebound at the start of this year. All right, so we're gonna skip the 33 for now because that is the RCR car. I do think that I believe it's not Austin centric. I do believe that it's been reported that Austin Hill is going to run quite a few races in that 33 for RCR. But for now, just because he won't be running for points, I'm going to put him down near the bottom. With that being said, we move on to Michael McDowell, or not Michael McDowell anymore. He's no longer with Furniture Row. Instead, his teammate of the past few years is going to actually be taking over that spot. Todd Gilliland is your new driver of the number 34. It's going to take some getting used to for him to be in the 34 and not the 38. Um, I think that he kind of falls into the same folly that Noah Gregson does. Furniture or Front Row Motorsports has shown a lot of kind of drive to join Trackhouse in 2311 as that clear number two team at each spot. But I think that they struggle just because there are five other Fords that are above them, whereas both of these two teams only have four cars ahead of them right now. So I think that they are probably going to be your 21 through 20, 21 through 27, 21 through 25 kind of area of drivers. With that being said, we also have Riley Preece, who, although being a new 2311 entry, I am going to put in this mid pack just because it's his rookie year. He's with a new team. It's not their premier Toyota team. I could easily see him kind of struggling a little bit. He's going to probably be your lower mid pack driver. With that being said, we also have another driver looking to kind of break out in Zane Smith, and these three I think are going to be racing around each other all season long. Gregson, Gilliland, and Smith. I don't think we're going to see who becomes kind of the primary front row motorsports driver until the end of the year, as all three have the talent and the drive to kind of take that position. And it would not surprise me if come 2026, all three of these guys are fighting for playoff spots with these top teams. I just think 2025 is a little bit early for that to happen. Now we have Cole Custer, who's returning to the Cup Series with the Haas factory team. And I think that Haas is just, it's hard to judge Haas because Stuart Haas Racing was so far behind over the course of the past 3 or 4 years that I just am not sure I can trust them to be a mid-pack team the way that Front Row will be. I think they're going to end up more on the lower tier, but do not be surprised if Cole Custer pops up and wins a race and makes his way into the playoffs. After that, we have John Hunter Nemechek, and unfortunately, both he and Eric Jones, I think, are going to come into this field filler category. It's nothing against these drivers, especially Jones, I know has so much talent. And Nemechek does too. It's just the fact that, kind of like with Josh Berry, you have to have cars that are kind of categorized as field filler, and that's what these two are right now. We're not at a point where the parity is so great that even the 42 and 43 can pop up enough weekends out of the year for me to move them above the field filler. The 44 is the NY Racing entry. They'll race in the 500, but they are not a full-time entry, so I'm going to move them down here, along with the 50 and the 66, and the 78 and the 84. Let me just go ahead and knock all of those out of the way real quick, because I don't even know if the 50 is technically entered in the 500 yet this year. I know the 66, 78, and 84 are. With that being said, Tyler Reddick is next, and he absolutely is going to be up here. I think he has a chance to kind of break into this top five stranglehold that the big two have, but he is just going to be up here in our playoff contenders, which does bring us to 8 of them with only 2 spots remaining. And actually, now that I'm looking at it, I might need to elevate 2 drivers here. So we'll see. We'll talk about that as we get closer to the end. With that being said, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., lower tier driver. I did again, kind of one that I don't like putting in the lower tier. He deserves credit for everything he does, but he's just not ever shown that consistency. In fact, I'm probably going to put, I do think he's probably the closest to being a mid pack. Now we have Bowman, and Bowman is a tough nut to crack because he has led the points quite a few times. I think I'm going to end up putting him in playoff contender with the caveat that he and Chastain might get swapped out once we get all of these cars kind of placed. Cody Ware, bye. Ty Gibbs, another interesting case because he really needs to be in playoff contender come this season. But for now, I think he's going to be outside looking in, just because I think we're still early enough in his career that it's going to be another year or two before he really starts to crack the top 10 in terms of points on a very consistent basis. After that, we have the new 60 car of Ryan Preece, a really good driver who just has absolutely zero luck. And I mean, zero luck. The amount of times this guy has been in horrible wrecks over the years, I have to put him in the mid pack just for that alone. But he's easily probably going to be one of our outside looking in drivers once all this shakes out. All right, with that being said, now we have Michael McDowell in the 71. And again, kind of a hard one to place. I think he ends up probably kind of in this sandwich here. I think this is going to be a real midfield sandwich. These 4, soon to be 5 guys, just in terms of where they rank, just because they're all kind of in this same situation with their cars where their teams are taking a lot of really good steps forward, but they're not there yet. With that being said, same thing goes for this guy, Carson Hocevar, mid-pack sandwich right here. All of these cars just squished in the middle. Shane Van Gisbergen, outside looking in, I think he's actually going to have a decent start to his career as a full-time Cup Series driver. Again, kind of like what I said with AJ Allmendinger, he's gonna be in a car that can put them up into that um real next level area in terms of competing. He's definitely going to get a win. He's definitely going to be in the playoffs. That much is for sure. I just am not sure how he's going to perform on the bigger ovals. We've kind of seen that he has the short track acumen to be really good. I just think that between him and Ross, Trackhouse has a really good chance to kind of lock down a couple different types of tracks that I don't think that they've had access to, which brings us to the final full-time points driver in Daniel Suarez, and he is really hard for me to rank because I really want to put him on outside looking in, and I think I still have one more spot for him to go 3, 6, 9. Yeah. So he's kind of that last outside looking in, and he is most definitely racing for his career, and I think he will be for a little while to come. He was Trackhouse's first driver, and I don't think that they want to move away from him. But charters are getting kind of collected amongst the teams again, so it's highly likely that come soon, with Connor Zilich waiting in the wings, he could be in trouble if he doesn't really pick up the pace, and he doesn't kind of have that moment like Chastain or Van Gisbergen does in terms of just kind of showing where he's at. But he did get a win and got in last year at Atlanta, so it could easily be that he ends up being the only Trackhouse driver in. With that being said, I do want to make this playoff contenders tier a full 10. So I'm going to start looking at a couple of these guys down here. And I think the easiest call is actually going to be Chris Buescher to make it up here and kind of pip in, which does leave an outside looking in spot. And I want to give it to Ryan Preece. And it probably is Ryan Preece, but I want to give a shout out to someone that I think is going to have a really good year in Carson Hocevar, who I think ends up really showing out and kind of battles this 60 car and this 34 car all year to see who gets that final spot in the top 20 come playoff times if there's no shocking winners. Now let's take a look up here at this playoff contender chart, I think I'm pretty happy with this top five. Actually, I'm not. I want to put Tyler Reddick right there. I think I want to jump Hamlin with Byron. So this is probably the right top 10 in this order. These three at the back, Chastain, Bowman, and Busher, all could kind of flip whichever way you want. Same thing with Blaney, Elliott, and Hamlin. Really, you could probably throw Byron into that grouping. On moving down to this outside looking in. So if this is the top 10, the top six right here. So Keselowski, it's not Busher anymore. Briscoe. Jeez, I keep wanting to say it's Truex and it's not. Bubba Wallace, Ty Gibbs, Shane Van Gisbergen, and Joey Logano. That is your kind of fighting for the point spot in the playoffs. I do think two or three of these gets win. I could also see any of these for really anybody in these top three categories kind of jumping up and pipping a win away. Um, these four back here, I think, are kind of in their race for their career areas. I know Carson Hocevar is only in his second year, but I think he needs to show some consistency to get some teams to or to get his team to kind of trust him a little bit more. This mid pack, I'm pretty satisfied with. It's gonna be a battle. I'm actually looking forward to seeing how all six of these cars do over the course of the year. Lower tier and field filler, kind of just there. I feel bad about putting anybody down here, but it's just hard for me to say that these 10 cars are going to have the same ability as the 26 that I put above them. But with that being said, that's going to be all for me. I will catch you guys soon with my playoff predictions.